Hi, welcome to Cooking with Diane. I'm Diane, and today I'm making a video on how to make fried pickles. I decided to make this video because not only are fried pickles fun and delicious to eat, but they're a really great introduction to deep frying at home. I think a lot of people are scared of deep frying at home because they're worried it's going to be messy, it's going to be expensive, maybe you think you don't have the right equipment. I want you to know that it doesn't have to be scary, that you can do it at home, and that as long as you have a pot and a slotted spoon, you can deep fry anything at home. But fried pickles are a really great place to start because they're fast and easy. So let's get started. We're going to start with the pickles. I have these really delicious dill pickles from my farmer's market. Any sort of dill pickle will do. I recommend something salty, garlicky, savory tasting rather than a sweeter pickle. And cucumber pickles are traditional, although I'm sure you could try this method with other sorts of pickles like pickled okra. I'm just going to use one pickle today just to show you how to do it, but you can scale this recipe up or down as your needs allow. So we're going to start by slicing the pickle. Some fried pickles come in spears. I like to make fried pickles in slices. I just think it's easier to get them all evenly cooked that way. So I'm going to slice my pickle into 1/4 inch slices. So not too thin, not too thick. I'm not going to include the ends as my fried pickles. So you want your slices to be about this thick. All right, so now all my pickles are sliced. Next, we're going to make the batter. So when you're deep frying something, you're generally going to batter it before you put it in the fryer. The batter usually has some mixture of flour and egg. Sometimes people make a wet batter, so that's kind of like it's the consistency of pancake batter that you dip your fried food into before you put it in the oil. And the point of the batter is that it protects the food on the inside from drying out and also adds a nice, crispy, delicious coating to whatever you're frying. I usually do a dry dredging mixture, which means that I'm going to be dipping my pickles into a dry mixture of flour and spices rather than a wet batter. So just in any sort of regular bowl, as long as it's a little bit wide on top so it's easy for me to dredge my pickles in it, I'm going to spoon a little bit of flour. There's really no need to measure for this sort of thing. You just want to eyeball how much flour do I need to coat this amount of pickles. And if you want to use a gluten-free flour blend, that's totally fine. I actually find that rice flour works really well for frying. And we want our dredging mixture to taste good because that's going to be part of our food. So I'm going to add some salt and some pepper. And just stir those in so that they're evenly distributed. I'm keeping it simple today with just salt and pepper. I feel like the pickles are pretty flavorful on their own. But if you want to spice it up, you can add any sort of dried spices to this mixture. Sometimes I add about a teaspoon of Old Bay. That'll add a lot of flavor. Paprika will add a lot of flavor, garlic powder, cumin, coriander, whatever you like. Feel free to experiment here. And to help my dry flour mixture stick to the pickles, I am going to add an egg, but in a separate bowl. I'm just going to whisk the egg up. So now I have two mixtures, my flour mixture and my egg mixture. So the point of having two mixtures is each mixture helps the other mixture stick to the pickles. So the pickles are already wet, so the flour will stick to whatever's wet. So the flour will stick to the pickle right away, but then it's not super coated. It just has a very thin layer of flour on it. So if I want a nice thick coating on my pickle, then I want to dredge it again in the egg, and the flour that's on the pickle is going to make the egg stick to it. And then I can go back in the flour and get a more robust coating. So this whole process is called dredging. And anytime you want to fry something, say you're making eggplant parmesan or fried chicken, this is the kind of process that you're going to go through, where you dredge whatever you're frying into a flour mixture and then an egg mixture and then back in a flour mixture. Sometimes you might dredge it in flour, then egg, then breadcrumbs. Sometimes you might just dredge it in flour. The components of the dredging vary, but the action is the same, which is that we want to coat the pickle completely. So I'm really coating it on both sides with flour, then shaking off any excess, coating it all over with egg, then shaking off any excess, and then coating it all over with flour again so that it's totally covered with the dredging mixture. You'll want to have a plate nearby to put your dredged pickles. And you might also notice that your hands are getting a little bit dredged too. Some people try to keep one hand only in the dry and one hand only in the wet to prevent buildup on either hand, but your hands are going to get dirty no matter what. I usually go with one hand as the dirty hand and one hand as the clean hand in case I need to get something from the fridge or from a cabinet. That way I'm not getting sticky dough all over the kitchen. So I'm just going to dredge the rest of my pickles, and it's a little bit faster if you do a couple of them at a time. So my pickles are all dredged and ready to be fried. The excess dredging mixture, you usually don't really want to save that for anything because it's full of pickles and raw eggs. So do your best to just make enough dredging for whatever you're going to fry and compost the excess at the end. Now we're going to move over to the stove to do the actual frying, so come with me. Okay, so I want you to see my setup. I'm not frying a ton of stuff, so I only need a medium pot. This is going to prevent me from having to use more oil than I really need. If you're frying a lot of pickles or if you're making fried chicken or something, you're probably going to want a larger pot. It doesn't need to be an especially tall pot, but it does need to be wide enough. And we're going to need enough oil in here so that the pickles can really float and have a little room around them. We don't want to crowd the pot with lots and lots of stuff to fry. So the first thing I want to do, and I really should have been doing this while I was dredging the pickles to save time, is to get my oil hot. This is going to take a couple minutes because I'm going to be putting at least an inch of oil in there. This is not the time to use your fancy olive oil that you got in Sicily. This is the time to use cheap vegetable oil. I usually like to get organic canola oil. Sunflower oil also works really well, grapeseed oil, or just standard vegetable oil, which is usually a mixture of soybean oil and safflower oil. So I'm going to put probably close to this whole bottle in here. Yeah, I did need the whole bottle. So right now the oil's coming up to about here. You never want to fill your pot more than halfway with oil because once you put your fried food in there, it's going to start to bubble and you don't want your hot oil to bubble over or you could start a fire. So it's really important that your oil stays below the bottom half of your pot. That being said, you still need enough oil in there, again, for the food to float. So you want at least an inch for this kind of thing. Even if you use up the whole bottle, don't throw the bottle away. Save it because you might end up putting your old oil back in the bottle to dispose of it later. Just to get the oil hot, I have it on high heat. And it'll probably take about 5 to 10 minutes to bring it up to temperature. Temperature for most fried foods is 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So it is helpful to have some sort of thermometer available so that you can really test your oil and see what its actual inside temperature is. A candy thermometer like this works well. If you have an internal temperature thermometer for your meat, that'll work on this. You can also buy a laser thermometer for about $20 that you shoot a laser at any surface and it'll tell you the surface temperature of that thing. While my oil's heating up, I want to make sure that I have all of my equipment ready to go. So whenever I fry something, I like to set up a rack like this, and this is to put the finished food. A lot of people put their fried food on paper towels, but paper towels are going to absorb that grease, and then your food's just going to be sitting on greasy towels. If you put your fried food on a rack like this, any excess oil can drip down from the rack, and it just dries a little bit better, and I think you end up with a crispier product. You also save a few trees. You want to have whatever you're ready to fry ready to go. You want to have some salt nearby. Even though there's already salt in the pickles, we're going to salt them as soon as they come out of the fryer, and we'll talk about that soon. And you want something to lift the hot food out of the oil when it's finished. So this is my favorite instrument to use. This is called a spider. It's a wire mesh kind of spoon thing, and it's nice and wide, so I can really scoop all the pickles out of the pot in one go. If you don't have a spider, it's okay. You can also just use a standard slotted spoon. This is just going to take a little bit longer to drain all the oil off of your food. All right, we're at 350 degrees. Now it's time to fry. When you're frying anything, it's really important that you don't do anything to make this hot oil splash. So you don't want to toss anything in there, because if you accidentally splash hot oil on yourself, that could really give you a nasty burn. So it might feel weird, but it's actually safer to get your fingers really close to the oil's edge so that you can just slip the pickles into the oil without causing it to splash. If it scares you to put your fingers near the oil, you can put the pickle into your spider and just lower it into the oil. Whatever you're frying should start bubbling right away and floating as soon as you put it in the oil. If it's not doing this, if it sinks and isn't bubbling, then your oil's not hot enough. And that will cause your food to absorb the oil rather than to fry and get a crispy coating. So if you're frying properly, you're really just using the oil to suck all the moisture out of the outside of your food to give it a crispy coating. It's not actually absorbing that much oil. The nice thing about making fried pickles is that we don't need to worry about them frying all the way on the inside, because pickles are already ready to eat. We don't really want to cook them anymore because they're already soft and juicy. So really all we're cooking here is the flour coating. We want it to get brown and crispy on the outside. And you can stir it occasionally, make sure the pickles aren't sticking together, turn them over occasionally. And really what we're checking for, you'll know it's done when it's a nice golden brown color. Think of the color of fried things you order in restaurants. It's usually kind of like a golden walnut brown color. So it's easier to see the color if you take them out of the oil. These are still a little light, so I'm going to put them back in for another minute or so. These look good. So I'm going to scoop them up, shake off any excess oil, and then transfer them to the rack to drain further. As soon as I take my fried food out of the oil, I'm going to sprinkle it with a little bit of salt. I'm not trying to make it super salty, but the salt is actually going to help it dry out and get crispier. Now I'm going to recheck the temperature of my oil before I put in the next batch. Just because my oil was 350 degrees last time I checked it doesn't mean it's going to stay at 350 degrees this whole time. It's going to continue to get hotter as it stays on high, but then it cools down when I put in the pickles. So now it's up, it's up above 380, so I'm going to turn it down to low. So both turning it down to low heat and adding some more pickles will help cool it down. Really 350 is our ideal, but if it goes a little bit above or below that, you don't need to worry about it too much. Just adjust the heat as you need to. So my second batch of pickles is nice and golden brown. I'm going to transfer them to the rack. I'm going to salt them. And I'm going to turn off my oil. These are my fried pickles. These are best straight out of the fryer, as most fried food is. So make sure that you eat them while they're hot. If you would like to dip them in something, I don't think you need to be fancy about it. I think ranch dressing is great. I think stirring together equal parts mayonnaise, ketchup, and mustard is a great condiment for these, or you can just enjoy them as is. Just be careful of that hot pickle juice inside because it can really burn your mouth. So now you know that you don't have to go to the movie theater or the bar to get your favorite fried pickle treat. So now our pickles are done, but we still have this whole pot full of hot oil. I've made another video on how to dispose of your hot frying oil. So check that out to make sure you're doing it safely and not clogging up your drains. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.